So good evening, everybody. Shavua Tov, and welcome to our wonderful evening together celebrating Hanukkah homecoming. We are going to begin with Havdalah, then a couple of short announcements, and then our candle lighting, and then the real reason why you're all here, the wonderful Braid Theater. Arise, my friend, my beautiful one, and go forth. We are here live, but we are also in a hybrid mode. There are over 100 people watching us on live stream. So welcome to all of you from around Los Angeles, around the country, wherever it is that you are part of our Shomrei Torah Synagogue family this evening. Chazan Smith and I are happy to be here with you this evening, beginning with Havdalah to separate Shabbat to the wonderful opportunities that the new week provides for us.
Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam borei peri hagafen borei peri hagafen ya 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 da 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 ya 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 da 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 ya da 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 ya da da ya da da Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam borei minei vesamim borei minei vesamim ya 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 da 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 ya da ya da 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 ya da 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 ya da da ya da da ya da da Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam borei meorei ha'esh borei meorei ha'esh ya 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 da 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 ya 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 da 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 ya da 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 ya da da ya da da Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam hamavdil ben kodesh lecho ben or lechoshech Ben Yisrael le'amim, ben Yom Hashvi, l'sheshet yamei hamasei. Baruch atah Adonai, hamavdil ben kodesh lechol. Ya 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 da 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 ya da. Ya ya da 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 ya da da ya da da Eliyahu Hanavi Eliyahu Atishbi Eliyahu Agiladi Bimera ve'amenu Yavo Eleinu Mashiach ben David Mashiach ben David Eliyahu Hanavi Eliyahu Atishbi Eliyahu Agiladi.
Shavua Tov, everybody. Give your neighbor, if you know them and you're close to them and you live in the same household and you know that they are not carrying anything of any substance of worth, give them a hug, a kiss, wish them Shavua Tov. Remember, keep your masks on. We were both just tested thank God, we are clean and free, but we will put our masks on as soon as we go down. Everybody, you can find your seats. So in just a few minutes, we're going to light our Hanukkah candles. As Joel was singing Havdalah, I was noticing the beautiful candle, the braided candle, and it really is nice to be here with the Braid Theater. It's so nice to be able to be here for Hanukkah Homecoming. Hanukkah Homecoming was the vision of Ron Wolfson, an author and a Jewish educator based here in Los Angeles, and his dream was to bring the Jewish community together again after COVID. And as I said a few minutes ago when we were outside, the whole idea was that the hope was that COVID would be behind us. Unfortunately, it is not fully behind us, but we are hopeful for the future. We are confident that we will continue to move forward, not just as a Jewish community, but as a country with proper precautionary measures, but to re-enter society and be able to live fully and completely. And the Braid Theater, which tells the stories of Jews and non-Jews of what it's to be like to live in the 21st century, is such a great way to celebrate this homecoming, this coming out, this re-entry into the world. Tonight's event of the Braid is sponsored by the Phoebe Frank Arts and Culture Fund. Phoebe and Werner Frank, members of this congregation for decades. Indeed, Werner and his family are with us this evening. For those of you who did not know Phoebe, what a loss for all of you. But that doesn't mean that you can't get to know Phoebe through her writing, because Phoebe has written a ton. And I'm holding in my hand one of the books, the last book that she didn't write. It was written posthumously from Nook and Cranny, and I want to read you from the back of the book. Phoebe Frank was an observant and sharp-eyed viewer of life that led to prolific authorship of tomes, essays, and stories that revealed both her innate curiosity about people as well as the ability to see herself in the course of her lifetime. In her senior years, Phoebe was able to capture many of her earlier witty tales, poetry, and dramatic writings in two published books, Light That Bends When It Passes and Up in Orbit. Unfortunately, her life was cut short at age 87, leaving much of her writings yet to be shared. This has given surviving and loving husband Werner the privilege of gathering from the nooks and crannies of Phoebe's abundant files another home for heretofore unpublished manuscripts. Hence the book From Nook and Cranny. What a I cannot think of a better way to kick off the Phoebe Frank Arts and Culture Fund annual event with a showing by the Braid Theater, because the Braid Theater collects Jewish stories and shares them with the larger world. And Phoebe spent an entire life collecting stories and translating them into theater, into shows, into short stories, into essays, and into poetry. She entertained and dazzled her family and friends with her witty outlook, her intelligence, her comedic timing, and her flair for life. We miss her terribly. And we hope and pray that through these opportunities that we have tonight and in the future, we continue to learn from and with Phoebe for many, many years to come. And Phoebe would have meant so much to her to know that the show that we're performing this evening, the first of its kind on this stage, dedicated to our beloved cantor Ron Snow, the Snow Center stage at Shomrei Torah Synagogue. So I can't think of a more fitting opportunity to remember Phoebe and Ron Snow in this way. Where is it? Phoebe, who, as I said, was a great observer of life, wrote the following piece when it came to the celebration of Hanukkah. You know that there is a mitzvah that with the lighting of the candles, asur lehishtamesh bahem, it's forbidden to use them in any way, shape, or form, unlike Shabbat candles, except to enjoy them. They're not for any utilitarian purposes, the Havdalah, the Hanukkah candles. They're just to enjoy the glow, to remind us of the many miracles in our life, to remind us of what a special people we are, to remind us of the resilience of the Jewish people, which is what the show that we're going to see in just a moment is going to be about. And Phoebe reminded us of these short 8 lessons when we light Hanukkah candles. On the first night of Hanukkah, give a gift of yourself. Take the time to be with those you love. On the second night of Hanukkah, apologize when you argue with someone, especially if you know you're right. On the third night of Hanukkah, forgive your parents for being so tiresome and making so many mistakes, especially with you. On the fourth night of Hanukkah, forgive your kids for being so tiresome and making so many mistakes, especially with you. On the fifth night of Hanukkah, forgive yourself. On the sixth night of Hanukkah, don't run out of candles, but if you do, say your prayers anyway. On the seventh night of Hanukkah, which is tonight, say yes to life. And on the eighth night of Hanukkah, bless your candles and your flames. In addition, vow to live your life like the shamus that gives all the other candles light, because giving of yourself does not diminish the light from within. May her soul forever be a blessing to all of us. We rise once again as we light our Hanukkah candles.
Baruch atah Adonai, Eloheinu melech haolam, asher kitshanu b'mitzvotav, v'tzivanu lehadlik ner shel Chanukah. Baruch atah Adonai, Eloheinu melech haolam, she'asa nisim lavoteinu, bayamim hahem, bazman hazeh. Ma'otzur Yeshuati, lechana eleshabeach, tikon beit tefilati, v'sham toda nezabeach, lehetachin matbeach, mitzar hamna beach, azekmor beshir mizmor, Chanukah tamizbeach, azekmor beshir mizmor, Chanukah tamizbeach.
Can we add one more bracha for us being able to be together for the first time on this stage in this format? Let's sing Shehechianu.
Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam, shehechianu v'kimanu v'hegianu lazman hazeh.
Be seated. So in a moment, Rhonda's going to come out and introduce the show. A quick thanks to Seth Front, our Director of Communications, for making sure all of this is put together this evening. To Shani Hension, who on the lay side made sure that this event and tonight would go without a hitch. To Steve and Joel and Al, who are our tech crew, thank you so much. And to all of you for being here this evening to celebrate this Hanukkah homecoming. Without further ado, the founder and artistic director of the Braid Theater, Rhonda Spinnick. Oh, there you are.
Thank you, Rabbi. That was lovely. So, happy Hanukkah. I am Rhonda Spinnack. I am the founder and artistic director of The Braid, and I'm thrilled to be here celebrating the 7th night of Hanukkah with you all. And I want to just give a big shout out and thank you to Shomrei Torah Synagogue, to the Frank family, and to Ron Wolfson's Hanukkah Homecoming for helping to create and support tonight's event. So you all will be experiencing a special Hanukkah show, stories drawn from themes of resilience, rededication, and light, called Arise, My Friend, My Beloved, and Beautiful One, and Go Forth. Now, for those of you who don't know us, The Braid is a Los Angeles-based nonprofit theater company that has pioneered a unique theatrical art form called Salon Theater, which is a compilation of stories and songs, sometimes poems, curated around a theme meant to illuminate the human condition. Now, this unique art form sits at the intersection of storytelling and theater. So without sets or props or costumes, our actors, with binders in hand, perform inspiring Jewish stories that connect us all. Through sharing our stories, we open hearts and minds, create empathy and understanding, and ultimately create change. Now, during our 14 years, we've created 70 of these salon shows with various themes, toured them nationally, in person, and digitally. We've even brought one one-person show, to Off-Broadway called Not That Jewish. And then last month, the United Nations Program on Holocaust Remembrance broadcast one of our shows globally to over 30 countries, called Stories from the Violins of Hope. Yeah, it was really exciting. Thank you. If you are not yet a part of our community, which means you don't get our newsletters yet, please think about joining us. Sign up. You'll find out where and when and what time and what we'll be performing. And just go to our website, www.the-braid.org, and sign up on our mailing list. As is our custom, we'll have a quick Q&A post-show, and you'll get an opportunity to meet the actors. We have our director in the house. We'll invite her up. And now is the time for those who are here in person, and I haven't said this in over 2 years, please silence your cell phones. And for those of you who are at home, fluff a pillow. Put your legs up. And lastly, as we kindle the Hanukkah candles this time of year, we bring light to darkness. So too does this show illuminate, shedding light on the lives of Jews who overcame from within and from without. Now we give you, arise, my friend, my beautiful one, and go forth. Please enjoy the light. Chag Sameach.
Rock of ages, let our song praise thy saving power. Thou amidst the raging foes wast our sheltering tower. Furious they assailed us, but thine arm availed us, and thy word broke their sword when our own strength failed us, and thy word broke their sword when our own strength failed us. Mount Sur Yeshuati Lechana Eleshabeya Tikome Tefilati V'sham Toda Nezabeya Zetachin Matbeach Mitzaram Nabeach Azegmor B'shir Mizmor חנוכת המזבח. אז אגמור בשיר מזמור, חנוכת המזבח.
It was a stormy night in the Maryland suburbs of Washington, D.C. I was 6 years old, and my kid brother Harvey was 4. It was the third night of Hanukkah. My mother was in the kitchen preparing potato latkes. The homemade applesauce was warming in the oven. Snow was coming down quickly and sticking to the pavement. Maybe school would be canceled tomorrow. The storm outside, coupled with the festivities inside, made me feel safe. My parents explained the plan. Mom would light the shamas candle and hand it to me. I would take the shamas and light the first candle, then pass the shamas on to Harvey, who would light the second candle. Harvey would then pass the shamas on to Dad, who would light the third candle. There was something about this plan that did not sit right with 6-year-old me. Why should Harvey and I light the same number of candles? I should light more candles than Harvey because I was older. Mom lit the shamas and passed it to me. I savored the moment as I lit the first candle. And then, without skipping a beat, I lit the second candle too. I handed the shamas to Harvey. He ignored me and quickly lit candle number 3. Then he took the shamas and set my hair on fire. My locks grew back, but that's about the only thing that grew back. Harvey, his wife, and their one and only child live on the Atlantic coast facing east. And my husband and I and our one and only child live on the Pacific coast facing west. Of course, sibling rivalry is in our DNA. We're a mere link in a very long chain. There's Cain and Abel, Isaac and Ishmael, Jacob and Esau, Leah and Rachel, Harvey and Ellen.
Food was a way into Judaism for me. It began with Bubby's Shabbat dinners. Bubby Ida was not a good cook. She was a great cook. What came out of her tiny oven was an amazing array of dishes, many of them tailor-made for each member of the family and crafted without the benefits of recipes or cookbooks. Her major culinary skill could be described with that great Yiddish expression, as in, pour it in.
I put a little salt, a little pepper, until it tastes good.
I was a fat little boy. There's no other way to describe me. My clothes were purchased in the Husky section of the department store. For my bar mitzvah reception, Mom made
300 little kugels using muffin molds. I socked them away in the freezer months ahead of time. What I didn't know was that Ronnie was slowly eating them. Frozen.
I was placing other packages in front of her stash to hide my larceny.
3 weeks before the big day, I went to count them. There were 50 left.
What do you think she did?
What could I do? I made 250 more.
No reprisals, she just made more. The Jewish tradition of stuffing Jewish foods into Jewish children can be traced back to Russia, where most Ashkenazi Jews, like my grandparents, grew up in poor villages. In those days, families that had one chicken or some boiled potatoes on Shabbos considered themselves fortunate. When the immigrants arrived on these shores, the bounty of America was overwhelming. In fact, my family's business was in fruits and vegetables and groceries and booze, so our dinner tables were laden with food. Our pantries filled to overflowing. Bubby cooking up a storm and instructing, "Eat, eat." Our family meals were never over until many of us surrendered with a bloated, "I'm stuffed." Which brings us to 1999. After a lifetime of overeating, I weighed nearly 300 pounds. Yeah, it's true. So I had to do something. So I concocted a personalized diet that began on January 1st of that year, and within 6 months, I had lost 100 pounds. How did I do it? I gave up all Jewish foods. I call them my K rations. Jewish foods that begin with the letter K: kugel, kreplach, knedel, knish, kasha, kickel, knockwurst, kippers, kishka, and if you're a wise guy, cake. Do I miss eating these cholesterol-clogging, fat-fabricating Michaels? These Jewish delicacies? Sure, a little. It did make me wonder, if we give up the food that we grew up with, do we lose our identity? I don't think so. I mean, don't get me wrong. The smells, the tastes, these are important memory makers, but a strong Jewish identity goes much deeper than that. I've kept off most of the weight for 20 years, and although I still don't eat too many K rations, once in a while I'll indulge in a knedel or take a bite of a knish. Oh, and last night at our Hanukkah party, don't tell anyone, I stole a few latkes when no one was looking. I guess you can take the Jewish foods out of the boy, but you can never take the boy completely away from those incredible Jewish foods.
Sorry. Okay. The day began as they always did, with my inner voice poking me awake. Why'd you say you'd bring lasagna to that potluck? You never made lasagna in your life. Buy something to wear to the Ginsburg bar mitzvah. Find my kid's trombone. How do you lose a trombone? And on till I stumbled out of bed. My to-do list was long. To save time, I meditated while drinking my morning espresso. Hard as I tried to think of nothing but a waterfall, within seconds I was falling off a cliff into the waterfall, realizing yet again that meditation isn't for everyone. Especially impatient ex-New Yorkers with things to do. I dreaded the daily battle of dragging my 15-year-old son out of bed and off to school. As a single working mother, stress was a way of life, and Jake fell into his own species on the evolutionary chart, the slow-mo sapien. Slow to get up, slow to get dressed, living on a planet where the words "on time" had no meaning. Time to get up, I nudged gently. 5 more minutes, leave me alone. That's how we ended most of our conversations these days. Leave me alone. He finally lumbered into the kitchen, only to remind me that he had recently decided I was an idiot. He never said it, but it was always implied. Hey, kiddo, what do you want for breakfast? Cereal? You idiot. The car screeched in front of the school just as the bell rang. I thought, well, it could be worse. I could be living with a teenager and my mother, and embarked on my busy day. Entering the indoor parking structure at the mall, I assumed that anyone could look ahead, see there's no spaces, and move on. But I was behind yet another unhurried creature. 1A is taken. 1B is taken. Well, look at that, 1C. Would you move? Oh my God, please move or I might actually die. At last, inside the mall, I found the perfect dress for the Ginsburg bar mitzvah, which they had in every size but mine. Resenting the waste of time, I checked my list, and there, wedged between the bank and Trader Joe's, was the appointment for my yearly routine mammogram. I sat in the clinical chamber of horrors in my little paper gown, waiting for the technician. 5 minutes had passed, then 10. I wondered if I'd be wearing this to the Ginsburg bar mitzvah. Finally, perky Melissa arrived, situated me, and scurried off to take the picture. Now don't move, she chirped. Leaning in with my breast trapped in a vice, I reasonably asked, "Where am I going?" Finally, after completing the last inch on the yardstick of my day, I was happy to get home. An hour later, Jake plodded through the door. "Hi, honey, how was school?" Fine. You idiot. And closed the door to his room. 2 days later, I received a letter from the imaging center. Actually, more of an invite to an ultrasound, coupled with the word suspicious. The good news was I now assumed I was dying and could cancel the frickin' Ginsburg bar mitzvah. The ultrasound was followed by a needle biopsy, after which the radiologist said, "Look, it'll take a week before we get the official results, but I can tell you now, you have breast cancer." "Oh, I'm telling you because you need to call a surgeon." And she gave me some names. On the way home, I no longer thought about all those things I had to do. Now it was more about all the things I hadn't done. This wasn't the plan. I was supposed to live long enough to be a burden on other people. What'll happen to me? What'll happen to my son? I decided not to tell him just yet. Not without all the facts. He had enough to worry about with girls' grades, pimples, and an idiot for a mother. I was nervous as I met with the surgeon. She said, "Relax, I have good news." "You do?" "Yes, we caught it early. It's stage 1 and very small." How small? Small enough so I don't have to go on all those 10K walks? She laughed and showed me a picture. "So I'm not going to die?" "Probably not from this." "Oh, ooh, thank you." A lumpectomy was scheduled for 11 o'clock the following week. That night, I made Jake's favorite meal, sat him down, and answered all his questions the best I could. And he got up from the table and threw his arms around me, long and tight, and said, "Lie down, Mom." And then my son uttered 4 words I had never heard in all his 15 years. "I'll do the dishes." The day before the surgery, I emailed everyone I knew. "Pray for me tomorrow from 11 to 1. Send positive thoughts from 11 to 1. Sure enough, the surgery was changed to 1 o'clock. "What? You can't do this. At one, they're not praying, they're eating. I don't remember much about the next few days, but the drugs must have really been good because I got an email from Amazon thanking me for ordering the 3 books on cheese making. The recuperation was followed by 6.5 weeks of radiation every morning at 9:20. As the weeks crept by, I became more and more tired. My caring friends orchestrated the nightly delivery of dinners, and Jake continued to be helpful and sweet. And he stopped saying, "Leave me alone." My last treatment was 3 days before Thanksgiving. Man, was I thankful to be alive, for loving, wonderful friends, but mostly for knowing that somewhere in all the shit and quagmire of teenage angst, my son had found his kindness and emerged not just as a man, but as a mensch. Within a week, we had nothing for dinner. I had to buy Hanukkah candles, find Jake's retainer. How do you lose a retainer? And on till my to-do list was long. He lumbered into the kitchen. I said, "Hey, kiddo, did you sleep okay?" Yeah. You idiot. Oh, this car screeched in front of the school just as the bell rang. I went about my day beleaguered by slow people everywhere. Once home, I took in the mail, and there, amidst the bills and the junk, was a flyer for the PTA potluck dinner and the Weintraub bar mitzvah. As I dusted off the menorah, I knew at that exact moment that all was right with the world.
I'm born in South Korea to a Korean mother and a Jewish father. When I'm 5, we moved to Tacoma, Washington. My parents make the decision that my sister and I will be raised as Jewish, even though the community had so few Jews. We can't even find challah on Friday nights, so we always did the motzi, the blessing for food, over rice. And then we had a big Korean meal for Shabbat dinner. One year for Passover, we don't have maror, bitter herbs, for our Seder plate. And my mom says, "We'll put kimchi on the Seder plate." It's a pickled spicy cabbage condiment, a main food in Korean life. Kimchi's like maror, just better. Even though my mother is a practicing Buddhist, our rabbi never asks her to convert. And he always makes us all feel welcome. I become youth group president and song leader of my Hebrew school. And then at 16, I go to Israel on a youth fellowship. It is the most exciting, spine-tingling learning I've ever done. And I deeply identify with Torah, our holy book, for the first time. But also, for the first time, I realize there's a larger Jewish community out there that won't recognize me as a Jew because I have a non-Jewish mother. In 1989, there are very few Asians walking around Israel. Little kids on the bus point and say, "Yabonit, Yabonit," which means Japanese. And then when they see my Jewish star necklace, they say, "Do you know what that is?" This also happens in the States quite a bit too. At services, I read from Torah, speak Hebrew, and can be droshing. And after an hour and a half of all this, people still come up to me and say, "Are you Jewish?" They have all the clues pointing in one direction, but they can't get past the way that I look. It's a disconnect for them. 4 years later, I'm back in Israel, praying with women of the wall, an outsider's minion of women trying to shine light on the fact that women are not allowed to read Torah at the Wailing Wall, as men are allowed to do. And even in that group, I feel like an outsider, not as someone who belongs. Later, I call my mother and I tell her about this experience where a guy in Israel had said to me, I'm sorry, I can't meet with you because I only teach Torah to Jews, and you are not a Jew. And so I say to my mother, that's it. I don't want to be a Jew anymore. No one would know. I don't have a Jewish face. I don't have a Jewish name. I could just disappear as a Jew and no one would know the difference. And my mother says to me, is that really possible, Angela? And it's not until that moment, when I consider stopping it all, that I realize how much it is just who I am, and that I could no sooner shed my Judaism than I could shed my being Korean, or shed my being a woman, or shed any other part of me that is essential and is deeply rooted. Sometime after that, I share with my mother that I want to become a rabbi. She gets tears in her eyes and she says, will you ever be accepted? Because while she knows that I'm never going to not be a Jew, she also thinks I'm setting myself up for a life of discrimination, pain, and struggle if I put myself out as a leader of the community. 20 years later, I'm in Manhattan at Central Synagogue, a 2,000 family congregation, a flagship synagogue of the Reform movement. I am serving as their senior rabbi. My mother was at my installation. Again, she had tears in her eyes, but this time it was for the way the Jewish community had really opened its arms to me as a rabbi and a leader. A lot has changed for me, my mother, and for the Jewish people.
At 51, I became the youngest member of the Kol Sephardic Choir. I was a terrible singer, and I was the best one there. In fact, no one in our little chorus could carry a tune, but we were dedicated and showed up for weekly practice. I couldn't quit because a chorus cannot exist without a soprano, and I was it. So I had to stay and bide my time until another gal with a high voice showed up. Truth be told, I love the songs. Those haunting, ancient melodies are my meat and potato barekas. They connect me to my Sephardic soul. In the interim, whilst I was a soprano and waiting to leave, I received a startling phone call from LAPD's Homicide Division.
I'm sorry to have to let you know this, but your sister Louisa and her 4-year-old son Jesse are missing. Her vehicle was found abandoned. Please send us any recent photos ASAP.
An hour later, I received a collect call from my sister.
Betty, it isn't my fault. Mario was driving.
Her new boyfriend, Mario, who happened to be a parolee, like all the other ex-cons in her social circle.
He wanted to have a vacation for us in Mexico. But then when we crossed the border back into San Diego, they threw us out of his car and nabbed him.
They had no money. They were cold and hungry. So I sent money. A month later, the phone rang.
Jesse's teacher called Protective Services again. I'm scared. They're going to take him away this time. I've decided that even though you won't accept Jesus as your Lord and Savior, I prefer Jesse to be raised by you than stuck in a disgusting foster home. You gotta take him.
Later that night, my sister, the born-again Christian, dropped her son on my front porch and drove away before I could even open the door. I'd never raised a child before. I was old enough to be his grandmother, and this was the last thing I needed. But somehow, I managed to navigate motherhood. One evening when I couldn't find a sitter, I brought Jesse to choir practice. I had him sit at a little table to do his homework, and somehow, miraculously, maybe by osmosis, he learned all the songs and chimed in from his little desk. A few weeks later, the choir performed a Hanukkah concert at a local college, and Jesse sang. Not to mention, he was the best singer in the group, and the youngest by 50 years. As he grew up, there were girls in school and video games, but he continued to love those songs. Sometimes we even sang them together. Ocho Candelicas was our favorite. You know, I may not have given birth to him, but we are connected. Two voices, one Sephardic soul.
Hanukkah linda está aquí, 8 candelas para mí. Hanukkah linda está aquí, 8 candelas para mí. Oh, una candelica, 2 candelicas, 3 candelicas, 4 candelicas, 5 candelicas, 6 candelicas, 7 candelicas, 8 candelas para mí. Muchas fiestas por fesar, con alegrías y pesar. Muchas fiestas por fesar, con alegrías y pesar. Una candelica, 2 candelicas, 3 candelicas, 4 candelicas, 6 candelicas, 7 candelicas, 8 candelas para mí.
Every year at Hanukkah, I think of my Uncle Jack. A rabbi once told me Hanukkah candles burn to remind us not just to see the light in front of us, but to see beyond, into the darkness. Some people shine brightly, others may have great light that you just do not see. When I'm little, my parents work full-time, so my grandmother babysits me every day. My 2 uncles live with my grandparents in their small 2-bedroom, 1-bath home. Uncle Aaron is busy at UCLA, but my Uncle Jack always has time for me, even though he's finishing his degree at Hebrew Union College. He plays with me, watches TV with me, hugs me tight, and makes me feel as if no one else in the whole world matters. As I grow older, I begin to notice his clothes don't fit him right. He rarely brushes his hair, and he repeatedly forgets to clean his teeth. I begin to see him as others do, as odd. And my grandparents are always arguing about my Uncle Jack. My grandfather grew up in anti-Semitic Warsaw before World War I in an orphanage, and he had to be tough to survive. He blames my grandmother for how Uncle Jack is, that she spoiled him, which is why he can't hold down a job. My grandmother begs my grandfather to have compassion for his son. They argue in front of Uncle Jack as if he's not there. And in those times and in so many other times during the day, Uncle Jack goes to pray with his beloved prayer books in quiet whispers with bended knees in a corner of the living room. My Uncle Jack desperately wants a job, any job, even though his dream is to be a Hebrew teacher, to tutor kids for their bar mitzvah. He does get hired a few times, but they never keep him on. Maybe it has to do with the fact that he stresses easily. Like in the car, when there's a lot of traffic, he'll erupt in some kind of claustrophobic rage and repeatedly hit the car seat in front of him. Or sometimes he'll pace and pace and pace, saying the same word over and over and over again. Throughout the years, we all know that there is something wrong with Uncle Jack. But as far as I can tell, no one really knows why he is the way he is. My Uncle Jack finally gets a job at Goodwill Industries as a janitor. And through a matchmaker, he marries. But it's to a woman who has a low IQ, and we come to learn later is also a pathological liar. He doesn't even consider divorcing her. Where would she go, he says. When Uncle Jack and my aunt get pregnant, they are persuaded not to have the baby. When I have my firstborn, a boy, we have a bris. When Uncle Jack holds my son, he pulls him close to his heart. Tears of joy pool in his eyes and flow freely down his cheeks. He whispers to my son, "Someday I will teach you Hebrew." I can feel his unconditional love and remember how he loved me when I was a child. Shortly after, I decide to celebrate Uncle Jack's 60th with a party. He wears a party hat when we sing happy birthday and he blows out the candles. It's like he's a kid brimming with delight. He's never had a party before. A few months later, my Uncle Jack dies. If he was sick, no one ever knew it. At the funeral, there is only the immediate family. When the rabbi eulogizes my Uncle Jack, I learned that Jack not only spoke Hebrew, but 7 languages nearly fluently, slept only 4 hours a night, spending most of his time engaged in study and prayer. The rabbi shares how he often learned from Jack about Torah or Talmud, that they had feisty arguments about God. And despite all of Jack's difficulties in life, he always defended God and the life he was dealt. The rabbi tells us Jack was a tzaddik, a righteous Jew, that he had tremendous light within. I am reeling. In all the years with Uncle Jack, never once did I sit down to talk with him about his studying, his thoughts about Torah or the Talmud. Never once did I ask him his favorite passage or prayer or what his learning had taught him. Never once did I ask him what he wanted from life. My cheeks burn with shame. I never knew my Uncle Jack. A beautiful soul had lived his life alongside mine, and I had not seen him.
I think dogs are happy because they have no idea what they look like. You never see a dog look in a mirror. God, I look so tired. Guess that 22 hours of sleep I got wasn't enough. But thankfully, it was God's plan that they also have no idea what you look like. Not in the human, judgy way. They don't see the extra pound or gray hairs or recent lines around your eyes. They just see your eyes. Happy, sad, scared, and they know just what to do. I pretty much always had a dog. In my childhood, there was Folly, a fast-thinking, eager-to-please ball of cinnamon poodle fluff. She never complained when I dress her up in doll's clothes and wheel her around in a laundry cart. Folly was my first lesson in the miracle of unconditional love. I was in my 20s and living in California when Dad called to tell me she had died at 17. I felt very sad, but was 3,000 miles away from the reality of it. In my late 20s, I married and inherited my husband's dog, McDuff, a not too bright, somewhat aloof Airedale Terrier with no sense of humor. Who's a good boy? I have no idea. We shared a mutual detachment. He came with Peter and left with Peter 2.5 years later. Beside me through my 30s and early 40s was Kiki, a sweet rescue shepherding mutt, a loyal girl there for the lovers, the breakups, the rise of my stand-up career, and the adoption of my son. I cried very hard when she died at 16. I know. They get old. They die. It's what we sign up for. There would be no dogs for a while. As a single working mother, I had enough on my plate raising a human puppy. But Jake was 9 when a friend's yellow lab had a litter and offered one to us. It was Hanukkah, so why not? Jake was now the perfect age for the whole boy and his dog thing. They'd be like Lassie and Timmy and Astro and Elroy and Old Yeller and whatever that kid's name was. We picked the goofiest one and named him Ziggy. From the get-go, he made us laugh. Look, mud on my head. Is this great or what? And Jake would play with him and train him and take him on walks. And then the magic happened. Ziggy fell in love with me. Oh, sure, he adored his boy, but Jake was off at school. I was home writing comedy. And at last, I had a funny dog. I gave him a voice and an attitude. He gave me endless material for my act. My dog's a retriever, but he's from L.A. Go get the ball. We're not taking the car. Oh, how we loved driving together, especially on the freeways. He'd let me put him in a big hat so we could use the carpool lane. I was in my late 50s and had no real man in my life. But Ziggy snored and farted and slobbered me with kisses, so it was almost the same. I believed in the magic of falling in love and still thought it might happen, but I wasn't alone. Ziggy and I were in love. Oh, how he'd greet me when I'd walk in the door. I could be gone 5 seconds. Look, I'm going to get the mail, okay? I'm opening the door. See, I'm opening the mailbox. I've got the mail. I'm closing it. I'm back in the house. You're home! Let's go out. Let's eat. Let's jump on the bed. I love you. Doubt I'd ever find a man like that. Ziggy was pudgy, with a square face and a stubby tail and an enormous head. But he believed me when I said, "Who's my very slim, handsome boy?" He always seemed to be smiling. When I did date, he'd get jealous. If a guy brought me flowers, Ziggy'd bring me a dead gopher. I didn't want him to feel bad, so I propped it up in a vase. He was sprawled out on the examining table with his usual smile. As the vet spoke words I desperately tried to process. He has what? But he's only 9. Ziggy saw it in my eyes and heard it in my voice, and immediately edged closer to lick my face. When he passed, that was a level of grief not like the others. My son's heartache alone was hard to bear. I vowed I'd never put myself through that again. I'm in my 70s now, and Jake is off living his life. There have been men who've come and gone, and I saw myself in the mirror today. More gray hairs, deeper lines around my eyes. I'm trying to write a funny new play, but feeling rather uninspired. It's Hanukkah, so I think maybe tomorrow I'll visit the shelter, just for a look.
You could say anti-Semitism is what brought me to my Jewish identity. In college, I began to hear that there are some people who are reading some books that are illegal. I say, well, what does this mean? How could a book be illegal? I love books. I read books. So, I began to kind of look for those people, the so-called dissidents or refuseniks. And one thing led to another, and one of them trusted me and gave me a book to read. Exodus by Leon Uris. Somebody smuggled it in, and among the dissidents and refuseniks, we passed it around. It changed my life. It changed really hundreds of thousands of people's lives. I suddenly heard that Israel is not an enemy, that Israel is a Jewish country, that there is a language called Hebrew, that the Bible was written in my language, that it's okay to be a Jew. So my pride grew, my Jewish pride. From being beaten down, suddenly I say, I should not be ashamed. I should not be embarrassed. And then the day after I received my diploma as a physics teacher, I applied for immigration and I get refused. I run away from the KGB. I'm hiding in a village. One thing leads to another, and eventually I am arrested. I go on a hunger strike. But you don't go on a hunger strike alone. So, through the refuseniks in Moscow, through Sharansky, my name immediately was mentioned on BBC Voice of America, Radio Free Europe, and Voice of Israel. People have to know about it, so you don't disappear. It's my first night in prison. The guard clangs open the cell. There are a few of us brought in. He says, Ivanov, Peekov, you go over here. The moment he says my Jewish name, Feldman, I know that will be the end for me. I will be raped that night. So, I know I only have one evening to save myself. Quickly, I look around. I know right away who is the toughest guy. And so when this guy says, I want it quiet, everybody suddenly finds their place in the bunks. And the only place available for me is next to him. Because nobody wants to sleep next to him. You know, if you bump him in the middle of the night, you might get a knife in the back. So I am next to him. And this guy, Vito, says, I want some jokes. And somebody from the other side of the cell begins to tell, the dirtiest joke. And suddenly, I realize, this is my chance. I know a lot of good jokes. So I say, hey guys, would you like to hear something fresh from the free world? And they say, okay. So I tell them the best joke I know. And they are laughing, and I tell another and another. I spend the entire evening entertaining them, and so slowly, everybody falls asleep. On the third evening, somebody comes over and begins to bother me because I'm already weak from not eating and I'm lying down. And Vito says, don't touch teacher. Teacher. That was my nickname. And that is how I survived. Vito liked me and offered to protect me. But what kept me going? Anger. Anger against the government. Anger that they lied to me all my life. That they denied to me, the right to be a first-class citizen. I was a patriot. I was passionate. I was a communist. And yet they never gave me a chance. And now that I know there is a place for me, it is better to die in that cell than to stay in the Soviet Union. KGB gave in. They said, okay, get out. We'll give you 2 weeks to leave the country. And that was it. And I said goodbye to my only sister, to my family, to my friends, to my language, to my culture, to everything I knew. But I was free.
My mother drags me kicking and screaming to live in Bakersfield, California. It wasn't that I object to moving per se. I've given new meaning to the phrase wandering Jew chasing jobs around the country. The issue is I've lived almost my entire life in large cities. Chicago, Los Angeles, Fort Worth, Indianapolis. Bakersfield is a lot smaller. And keeping it real, whiter than I'm used to. More Christian, too. It is not, I am certain, an ideal home for a black, Jewish, feminist, single mother. But my childcare costs in Indianapolis were more than my mortgage, and it was probably just a matter of time before I got laid off there, as the industry I worked in was struggling. Meanwhile, my mother had wisely fled the Los Angeles real estate bubble for a more affordable Bakersfield. She's a widowed empty nester now, all by herself in a 4-bedroom house with a pool. A pool! My mother doesn't even know how to swim. I swallow my pride, take a job at a less prestigious company, and move in with my mother. She's on a fixed income and needs help with the bills. I need free childcare. This works for both of us. The culture shock is seismic. I realize I despise small town living. But at least Bakersfield has a synagogue. I join and try to make the best of things. I volunteer to help make latkes for a congregational Hanukkah party. It's hard work, so when I plop down to eat, I am exhausted. An older man sits down next to me. And as he is wont to do, my 3-year-old son Jake starts climbing all over the guy and talking his head off. In between trying to teach my barbaric 6-year-old daughter Kenya some table manners, sit still. Don't talk with your mouth full. I apologize profusely, and I urge Jake to leave the poor guy alone. The old man patiently waves me away and calls Jake cute. After a bit, he asks, "Where is their father? Can't he watch the kids a few minutes so you can eat?" I explain that the children have no father because I've adopted them from foster care. Sans husband. All by yourself? He asks, eyes wide. You're a single mom? He gawks as I turn from one wild, loud child to the other, trying to restore dignity to the table, but the kids are sugared up on Hanukkah treats and there is no decorum to be had. In a rare pause in the moment, in the chaos, my neighbor stretches out a hand and introduces himself. "I'm Phil," he says. "I don't think we've met." "Court," I say. "We moved here in March." Had I finished my Hanukkah shopping, he wants to know. Most of it. I started early so I could spread it out a bit because I took a pay cut when I moved out here. The reason I ask is I have this little country store out in Edison. I'm processing the unlikelihood of a Jew living or working in remote rural Edison as I shift uncomfortably in my seat. Great, I think. He's going to launch a sales pitch. Even if I had any money, which I don't, I would never drive 10 miles through farm fields to shop at a country store. "I wonder," Phil continues, "if you're not busy this afternoon, if you'd be willing to come to my place and let the kids pick out some presents on the house." A freebie! Now, that changes things considerably. I discreetly lean over to inquire in the rabbi's ear as to whether this man is a deranged serial killer. After she vouches for Phil's character, I agree. On the drive over, the kids grill me about where are we going and why. "Mr. Phil wants to give you a Hanukkah present," I say. "Now, you just pick one thing each, something very small, don't be greedy. And also, be sure to say thank you, even if you don't like it." I'm trying to lower their expectations. After all, we aren't exactly headed for Toys R Us or Macy's. The store, as it turns out, is a mobile home on the edge of a farm. And even as mobile homes go, this one is pretty pathetic. It looks like one good gust of wind could topple the thing. The children give me puzzled looks as we approach. "This is a store," Kenya says, a little too loudly. I shush her, and I tell her to be gracious, reminding her that nobody owes us anything, especially not this perfect stranger. Phil unlocks the place, steps inside, and holds open the door for us. Every square inch of this place is covered in sterling silver. The walls are dotted with oversized belt buckles, ornate horse saddles, cowboy spurs. There are glass display cases in the middle of the room so jam-packed with jewelry, you can hardly see what he's selling. The place positively sparkles. Phil takes Kenya's hand and walks her over to the belts. He finds a child-sized girl's belt with a sterling silver heart-shaped buckle. "Now, there are earrings to match," Phil says, pulling out sterling silver hearts with the same design as the belt buckle. And you'll need a ring. K for Kenya, right? He pulls out an adult-sized ring with a gold K on it. You just wear this on a necklace or something until your finger gets bigger, okay? He slides it on Kenya's thumb. Her eyes shine with excitement. Mommy, a real grown-up ring! Now you, young man, what do we have for you? He pulls Jake off the saddle my son had mounted when I was distracted by the sight of jewelry. You like horses, huh? How about this? Phil pulls down a big, gaudy cowboy belt buckle, sterling silver, with a little copper horse on it. Jake holds the belt buckle high and beams. Mommy, horsey! Phil turns to me. Okay, Mama, what about you? I'm standing there with my mouth hanging open, mentally calculating the value of the gifts this man has just given a preschooler and a first grader. Oh, I couldn't really. It's not necessary. Nonsense, Phil says. Pick something, really. In the interest of good manners, I select something small to appease him, some round silver earrings. I hope they don't cost him too much. Oh, that's a set, Phil says, his face lighting up. He races through the store collecting things from corners and drawers and shelves as I follow him imploring, no, wait, please, stop. There is a matching hair barrette and a matching ring and a bracelet, silver with gold trim. Oh, but if I wore the bracelet, I really ought to have this other pair of earrings too that also has gold trim. I protest helplessly as Phil ushers us out with our stash. You are so very, very kind, but really, you don't have to. Happy Hanukkah, he says cheerfully, and then slams the door. So, I guess that's Hanukkah. Bakersfield style.
Okay.
Your mama made it. Your bubby made it. You make it. Or if you haven't yet, you will soon, because life without it makes no sense, unless you're vegan. Because a whole bowl is filled with the soul of your people, a bellyful, a side of noodle, steaming and warm, fluid and soft, hot, comforting spoonfuls that send you back home, never alone. A recipe honed over generations and generations in large cast iron pots and wood chopped hard. A precious match that lit the amen, that sent your neshama soul from Shemayim to Eretz, heaven to earth. With loads of fresh carrots and fennel shumar picked from afar, or perhaps near, ever clear and revealing, healing, sending you reeling through memories of Shtetlach and Stieblach, of Kishke and Kreplach, of lullabies and lilac, of sunny days and cold nights, of soothings and eased frights, of old world delights and Yiddish kites. Soaring through skies and new heights of sensuality and pleasure you never knew could be contained in a spoon. When the bowl is empty, the pot is not. There is somehow always more to explore and revisit the hearth where the S-Mind-Kind doctrine was born, where no one's forlorn or forgotten but adorned with the elixir of life. The original penicillin so many women before you learned to prepare. And now, if you dare, it's your dinner fare, your loving care, your recipe for making everyone better and fed and held in the embrace of a memory that still tastes like a better world, unfurled on a table each Shabbos. No love lost. No conflict of Ashkenazi, Sephardi, just you and me, dear chicken soup. until my head droops into the sleep that heals and mends the ache in my limbs and my heart, so I can start to cook a fresh pot anew. And when you do, just use a whole chicken, because that's the way Jewish girls make it smell so heavenly, so healing, so feeling, so real.
Yeah, 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 yeah. Yeah, 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 yeah. We all got a life to live. We all got a gift to give. Just open your heart and let it out. We all got a piece to bring. We all got a song to sing. Just open your heart and let it out. Yeah, when I reach out to you and you to me, we become B'Tselem Elohim. When we share our hopes and our dreams, each one of us B'Tselem Elohim. Breshit bara Elohim. Breshit bara Elohim. Breshit bara Elohim. All our hopes and all our dreams, Breshit bara Elohim. Each one of us B'Tselem Elohim. Breshit bara Elohim. All our hopes and all our dreams, Breshit bara Elohim. Each one of us B'Tselem Elohim. Yeah, when I reach out to you and you to me, we become B'Tselem Elohim. When we share our hopes and our dreams, each one of us B'Tselem Elohim. Yeah, 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 yeah. Yeah, 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 yeah.